week's training, and welcome back. Hopefully there will be, some resources and tips that we can give you today that'll help you as a new project director. And again, I hope everyone is staying safe and that you and your families are doing well. So before we get started, let me introduce our South Carolina 21st Century team to you, and team members, as I call your name, as we did last week. Please show your faces and just kind of wave your hand so everyone can get a glimpse of who you are. And we will start with Miss Latasha Ransom.
Hello.
Thank you, Latasha. Jamal Perry. Jamal, can you hear me? Okay, I'm not sure if he can, but he's on the call. Shonda Pooser.
Good morning.
Good morning, Shonda. And Amy Bosch.
Good morning.
Morning. Thank you all. And again, I'm Joyce Patterson, team leader. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping tips I would like to pass along. If you haven't already muted yourself, we will mute everyone, but if something happens and there's a glitch, please mute yourselves so that we can avoid the static and extra noise. And then also turn off your cameras if you don't mind. That'll just help us with the bandwidth. So with that, we will get started. And today we will...
Joyce, excuse me. I'm sorry. This is Shonda. Just a reminder to everyone that this meeting is being recorded. We have to let you know ahead of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Shonda. As a reminder. So we, as a team, will review the handbook. If you haven't gotten it, you should be receiving it real soon. Right now, we'll just be going through the PowerPoint version of it, but everyone will receive an email version of the handbook that everyone should use kind of as your resource guide. So with that being said, we'll get started, and Amy Bosch will lead the discussion on the 5 focus areas. Following Amy will be Jamal Perry on partnerships and enrichments. And then pulling up the rear will be financial pitfalls and the budgets and amendments by Shonda Pooser in that order. So Amy, you have the floor.
Okay. So probably the most challenging 5 focus areas is always attendance. So we can start with that. But just a reminder that these 5 focus areas were in your original grant. They were what your objectives were built on. So we know a lot of times there's a disconnect between the grant writer and then the grant managers, the project directors, the site coordinators. So if you do not have a copy of your original grant, please reach out to your grants manager and we will try to get you an electronic copy of that, because it is a very important for you to reference that, because ultimately that's what you're going to be held responsible for. So let's just start with attendance. And we know that all of this is probably a little bit off right now with COVID. But we do want to talk about your service number. So your service number is the number of students you are funded based on. So that's the number of students that you need to try to serve. We know that many programs have submitted program modifications during the COVID as we're getting back to face-to-face, and as programs are doing hybrid models and all virtual models and so forth and so on. So we do know that service number may be skewed right now, but we do need to keep your original service number in mind, because that's where your funding is based from, and we do not want at any time your funding to be impacted as we get back to face-to-face. We do monitor your attendance through AIR, and Samantha will be talking more about that. That's your program attendance. We want to stress to you the importance of keeping and maintaining attendance even during your virtual programming. And we also want to talk to you about the importance of making sure your students are coded in PowerSchool, because that's how we're going to pull their regular school day attendance, which we also monitor. We know, especially during COVID, really during any time, student recruitment is challenging at times for some programs. And Donna, which is one of our peers, is going to talk to you guys in a little bit about what they're doing out at her school in Batesburg, which is a rural area for student recruitment, and how they go about selecting their students, and how COVID has either helped or hindered that process. So attendance is very important. And we know during your regular programming, you can help with attendance through, your field trips, your enrichments, your guest speakers. But attendance is very important and kind of the backbone of your program. And then after attendance, we're going to talk a little bit about academics. And 21st Century does require that you serve your students with ELA as well as math. Now, in your original grant, if you talked about STEM or special, even social studies, it's going to be important that you do those core areas as well. But as far as 21st Century, we do require a ELA component as well as a math component. And generally speaking, on a regular daily schedule, we like to see that your academic component is at least 50% of your day. So if your program operates 3 hours, we would expect an hour and a half of that to be academic focused. And we want to stress here that it does not mirror the school day. We're not talking about sitting in front of a teacher for an hour and a half. We're just talking about academically programs and activities, guest speakers that support the standards. So we do like to stress that we do not want these students having an extended school day. We want it to be very engaging. We want it to be impactful. So make it very creative. And we know that right now that's kind of challenging. We do require the 10-to-1 ratio during the academic component. That has not changed. We've had a lot of questions over the last several weeks about that ratio and if it could be higher due to COVID. And we are really just want to stay firm that that 10-to-1 ratio needs to stay intact right now. We do understand that sometimes getting certified teachers in those positions for that 10-to-1 is not possible. It could be a staffing issue or even a funding issue. And you can refer back to your RFP, which is a request for proposal that whoever wrote your grant went by, and it does talk about that. But what we recommend is certified when possible, and if not, it needs to be someone that has some background, someone of, you need to somehow document that that person is able to fulfill that role as a certified teacher during the after-school program. One exception to the 50% of the day not being focused around academics is your Fridays. A lot of programs use their Fridays as their fun Fridays, and that would be their day that the guest speakers would come in, or the outside vendors for dance, karate, whatever. So whether it be Fridays or your midweek Wednesday, some programs do it on Wednesdays due to staff meetings during the regular school day. So whatever day that falls on, we do understand that you may have a day within your program that is not academic based, that it is your enrichment heavy day. We just ask that our school year, when we're coming out to do our site visits, that you actually make sure that we're coming on an academic based day. What we don't like to see is when we come out at being an enrichment day, because we really want to see the academics going on as well in your program. Okay, and then the third focus area is the behavior. So this is another area that making sure your students are coded in PowerSchool is very important, because we're going to be tracking their discipline through PowerSchool. And in addition to that, at the end of the school year through AIR, we're going to send surveys out to the teachers, and it's going to ask them, if they've seen any improvement with their social and behavior impact. A lot of programs implement character ed programs that kind of address these issues, but we want to make sure that the whole child's being addressed, and you do that with an elementary, middle, even high schooler without addressing the social and behavior components. So we just want to make sure that that's a key element within your program. The fourth focus area is family literacy. This is another area that we've had a lot of questions about during COVID. We are still expecting our programs to have a family literacy component. We know that this may look a lot different than what it has over the last few years, but it's just very important. And I actually had a program tell me this week that they thought this component was going to be easier right now because students and parents are having to be more engaged in their students' learning, and that parents are needing more support, whether it be the technology piece of it or just that there be a lot of parents are having to be a more active role in their child's education at this point. So we just want to remind you guys that do not forget about your family literacy. Even with your program modifications with COVID, we're still, this is still an expectation. And this family literacy is going to be tracked through AIR, and Samantha can talk more about that later. But it's very important that you keep up with what family members are attending your programs. And then last but not least is your sustainability. This is where you are going to really work with your, get your community buy-in. You're going to, in your districts and your schools and your administration buy-in. You're going to talk to your partners and get out in your community. Let your community know that your school or your community center has an after-school program and the impact it's making on the community. And I also think this is a good point to mention that advisory boards are required. And remember that students and teachers, parents, community members are required to be on that advisory board. In addition, I also think it's important to have your school administration as well as your partner on the advisory board. Advisory boards are still required during COVID as well. Of course, those meetings can look different. It can be Teams, Zoom, however, but we do require advisory boards meetings, and generally speaking, they need to happen quarterly. And I believe that's it. Now, additionally, let me see what I was going to say. When we come out to visit, it's very important that your advisory board and your teachers, your staff, understand the 5 focus areas of 21st century. That is one of the questions that we actually ask when we come out and we do our interviews. So a little tip for you guys: we want everyone to know what are your 5 focus areas, and they should be able to name these 5 areas: attendance, behavior, academics, sustainability, and family literacy. So it's very important, as you do your staff trainings, to go ahead and start talking about these 5 focus areas and talk to your staff members about the way that you guys are, meeting this requirement and the importance of the requirement. So, okay, and I think that's all I have in regard to focus areas.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Jamal, before you come on, I failed to mention this, but if any of the participants have questions, please put your questions in the chat box, and the chat box is being monitored. And at some point during the training, we may have some downtime where we can actually answer any of the questions that may not have been answered in the chat box. All right, so with that, we will turn this over to Jamal to talk about partnerships and enrichment. Jamal, you're on.
Okay, thank you, Joyce. Next slide. All right, partnerships back into the 5th focus area, which is sustainability. For those of you who may not be aware, the grant will see a reduction, funding reduction in years 3 and 4. So that's why partnerships of establishing and forming partnerships is very important, and actually prior to year 1 of the grant, initializing or starting the grant. But it's very important to start this activity in year 1 so that you can sustain the blow of reduction in year. So we're just going to share some tips of how to establish and maintain partnerships. So one thing you should do is to establish or maintain partnerships, you should be ready at the drop of a dime to speak about your program. You could attend meetings at churches, civic meetings, any type of community meetings so that you can let, like Amy said, you can let the community know that there's a program that's serving students in that area. While you're at that meeting or anywhere, you should have what they call an elevator pitch, which is a 30 to 45-minute spiel, if you will, that lets people know what the program is, what it's about, who you serve, just something short and quick that you can let somebody know what the program is about. And if you do meet somebody and say, yeah, that sounds interesting, you always want to be ready to tell them what you need or how they can help. And in this example that we have on example of volunteer levels, that they potentially met somebody and say, sure, I want to help. And then they automatically have ways you can volunteer at different levels. So you always have to be ready to talk about your program. Okay. And once you establish a partnership, be comfortable and ready to build and maintain that partnership, because you want to get value out of the partnership, and the partner should see value in partnering with you as well. And one way to do that is by using social media and taking pictures. If you access or have the correct releases from students and parents, and put information on social media to thank your partner or take pictures to show them that you appreciate what they're doing for your program. Next slide. Okay. And once you've established that partnership, you always want to make sure that you formalize it in writing. And that's part of your grant application. You have MOAs in your grant application because you're required to have at least one partner for your program. But when we come out, one partner, because there are limitations on what the grant fund is used for. So those partners are here and vital and important because they help you fill in those gaps that the grant funds are not allowed to be used for. So once you gain a partner, you want to again formalize it by getting it in writing, and you clear on in the writing. You have a clear understanding of what each party expects from the other. Is it going to get paid? Going to discount something, or they're going to provide a good what time they're going to do it, how many days they're going to do it, basically the frequency of the service, everything that you need, everything that you agree upon should be in writing on that memorandum of understanding. And then the MOA, again, it's a working. So as the program goes on throughout the year, if you see something that you don't agree with, you don't understand, you think it needs to be changed, sit down, meet with your partners regularly so you can go over the MOA and discuss changes, and then have that document signed every year. Revisit that MOA with your partner every year. So all right, next slide. All right, touched on this a little bit earlier. You want to make your partners feel welcomed and useful. And there's several ways you can do that. We borrowed this information from one of the programs, and that's her name in the slide, actually. She has a great partnership program. It's computerized. She has a list of partners in the computer and resources, what they provide. And I'm not sure I think we have her information, and we can share that information with you as well. But when you have a partner, you want to invite them to the program and see what their investment in is actually, so you want to make sure you can welcome them by putting signs out. You can have the students act as ambassadors and welcome them to the school. The students can write thank you notes for whatever service or whatever time they provided um, for the program. But just make sure that you do that. You make sure that they feel the, if you will, feel the love from the program, because they didn't have to do what they're doing. So you just want to make sure that they the welcome and the thanks and the appreciation and gratitude that you have for whatever they're providing. And you want to make sure when you do have partners, again, going back to that MOA, that they have specific roles and you all are clear on what each party is supposed to do, what each party is supposed to provide. And just partnerships don't always have to be monetary. They can be volunteer time, donations. So not only for monetary partnerships, look for partnerships or partner made. You may meet somebody that is a retired music teacher, and they may want to come into your program, and they're willing to teach piano lessons for free or no, reduced costs. That will save you money. That also adds an exciting enrichment for your students to engage in. So just make sure that you're tapping into other people's talents. You may, speaking to a staff member at your school, they may be the math teacher, but they also do arts and crafts as a hobby. So you want to make sure you leave no stone unturned when you're trying to uncover and add new partners to your program. Next slide. Okay, so when you're doing after school enrichment programming, you want to make sure that it touches on some of these areas, some if not all. Again, you have to refer back to what you have written in your grant proposal. So when we come out, we're going to review your grant proposal and your daily schedule, and we expect to see what you said you were going to do on that schedule. Unless you have sent in a modification to your grant manager, we're expecting to see those enrichments, those academic classes that you said you were going to do on your during our visit according to your daily schedule. So when you're doing, also another note, if you're noticing this goes about engaging, programming, and trying to maintain attendance. As a program director, project director, site manager, you need to be visible. You need to make sure you're walking around your program and seeing what's working. Is the teacher working? Is this teacher appropriate for this class or this group of students? Is this enrichment not working, or is this not working? What do I need to do to change so I can make sure my students want to come to my program? So one way to do that, depending on the age group, make sure you're polling or checking with your students. What do you think about this? You can do a survey, uh, an informal survey at some point during the year, just to see if the students are actually enjoying the enrichment. Our former colleagues used to say the students will vote. They'll let you know how they enjoy your programming, because they usually vote with their feet. Meaning, if you're not engaging them or giving them good enrichments or enrichments that they see value in or are interested in, they're going to try to slip away and get on the bus or go home. They're going to try to avoid the program. So make sure that you're always monitoring your program. You're out watching and making sure that the uh, the enrichments, the activities are engaging and making students want to come to your program. Okay, next slide. Okay, field trips. Part of an enrichment. That's something we may not be able to do now. You can do, just an aside, my son is virtual, like many students across the state. They're doing virtual field trips. So just think of, hold that to the side. But in a normal setting, field trips have to have some type of academic connection and purpose. Yes, we want it to be fun, but it can't just be, hey, kids had a great 9 weeks, a great 9 weeks, let's take them to Carowinds. Or let's just take them to the beach and let them put their feet in the sand. There's no academic component to that. Well, they do need to be rewarded, but the activity, the field trip has to have some type of academic component. You cannot exclude any of the children. The field trip has to be for the students who attend the program. You can't make us up, well, this group of students made the honor roll and this one didn't, so we're going to take the honor roll students. You can't do that. You have to include any student that is part of your 21st century program. Also, field trips cannot be conducted during your regular school day hours. Some of you may be thinking, well, how do I do a field trip? You can take field trips on the weekends. You can take field trips during the week and say there's a teacher in service day and the students are out. You could use that day for field trip. If the students are on an extended break or something like that, but you cannot take them on a field trip during the school hours. All right, next slide. I think that's it for me.
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Shonda. You're up. You'll talk about the financial pitfalls and budget amendments.
Okay. Good morning, all. I'm going to share my content again. I'm here to talk about financial pitfalls. Your responsibilities as a project director is to ensure that grant funds are expended in accordance with your approved budget and budget narrative. We ask that you maintain separate accounts and records for each source of funds. For instance, if you have more than one 21st century grant, for instance, we do have some programs that, like, for example, a Boys and Girls Club who may serve various schools with different grants. We expect each grant to have its own separate accounts of records. Okay, that would include your general ledger, any accounting documents and accounting systems. Each grant needs to have its own account number with its own separate accounting system, not accounting system, but separate records. Allowable expenditures. In your RFP, it lists allowable activities. However, whatever you have submitted to this office as a part of your approved budget, in your budget narrative, those expenditures are allowable. Only what's in your approved budget is allowable. If there needs to be any changes, you would have to do a budget amendment. If you need to do something a little bit different, again, we would require a budget amendment. However, it still has to align with the goals and objectives that were set forth in your approved grant application. Expenditures for your grant need to reflect resources necessary and be directly allocable to your grant program. For instance, if a focus of your grant program is STEM and instead you direct your resources to something else entirely, that's not necessarily allowable. You would have to get permission prior to make those types of changes. Your expenditures must be reasonable for the performance of your project. When we say reasonable, it is highly unreasonable to purchase 120 computers. Okay, it's not necessary for the performance of your project. If you only need to build like a small computer lab, you don't need 120 computers, if that makes sense. You must conform to any limitations or exclusions. Certain exclusions that we have are items like t-shirts. Yes, we know you want to advertise your program and let everyone know that this group of children come from this particular program, but there are certain exclusions or unallowable activities that's also listed in your RFP that you just can't do. As I said before, any expenditures that are submitted, they must adhere to the goals and objectives set forth in your approved grant application and your approved budget. Any changes to that must have prior approval. Everything you request, we must see a cost basis. When we say a cost basis, that would include the formulas that were submitted in your original budget narrative. For instance, you may have requested 5 computers at $500 each. Okay, that we would need to see. It is unreasonable to purchase 5 computers at $5,000 each. We know computers don't cost that much anymore. Okay, so we must see the cost basis just to make sure that we see the reasonableness of each expenditure. All expenditures should be consistent in nature and be categorized in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. When we say that, in the back of the handbook, we see that there are function and object codes, which is how you would allocate your funds in gaps. For instance, there would be function codes of 100 for instruction or 200 for support. So basically, any expenditures that you do, it would need to be consistent. If you're paying teachers, you're paying them under the 100 function. That's in accordance with gaps. If you're paying a vendor, usually that's under under object code 300 for purchase services. And actually, I think it's 300 as well for community assistance or community help. So all of that would need to be consistent. Any expenditure should not be included as a cost item in any other federally funded program. That's called supplanting, okay? If you are paying a teacher using another federally funded program, you cannot also pay that teacher from 21st Century Grant. Okay, that's called supplanting. There must be some separation there. How do I know what project activities are allowable? All allowable grant activities, they are kind of listed in your RFP as well, and they have been approved in the pre-award process. So basically, we looked at your grant proposal and we saw your activities, so we ought to know what items are allowable or what activities are allowable, and they have been approved. Any changes to those activities would require our approval, or our pre-approval, I should say. So it should be, you should seek approval prior to implementing any changes. To be reimbursed for your expenditures, all of these grant funds are issued on a cost reimbursement basis. Thus meaning you have to spend the money before you can be reimbursed for it. Okay. Expenditure reports, along with your invoices, receipts, timesheets, other backup documentation, they should all be maintained and kept in your binder. Okay, information about what should be included in your binder is also in your handbook. We have attached it to the invitation, the handbook, and it will also be emailed in a separate email to all grantees. But definitely all expenditure reports, invoices, if you cannot maintain a copy in your binder, you should still be able to get access to those copies quickly. Okay, part of our monitoring visits, we ask to look at expenditure. We may ask to look at an expenditure report, and we expect to see all documentation that should be attached to it. That would include your timesheets for all your staff, any other backup documentation. In your handbook, we also, which I believe Melissa Myers, our the Director of Office of Auditing Services, she'll talk about that a little bit, where you are expected to maintain documentation, and they provide some guidelines on the types of documentation that you should maintain for any expenditure claim. Budget and program modifications. To get approval for any change to your grant, that is to the grant, not to your budget itself, but any changes to your grant, you would have to submit it in writing. Changes to the scope of work, the school served, site locations. For instance, if the site where you normally will hold your after school program, if you're at a community center and they had a pipe in that center and you're using a temporary center, that would need to still be submitted in writing, letting us know the change of location. Changes to key staff, changes of project director change. If there's a change in the financial official or the authorized official, you need to let us know those types of changes in writing. Okay? Transfer of funds. We do need to know if you're transferring funds, now we're in your budget itself. If you're transferring funds from one category to another, we still need some documentation. I say documentation, but what I really mean is just something in writing letting us know what's happening. Okay? Costs requiring prior approval. If you need to change and make a big purchase, for instance, as project director, maybe your computer crashed and you need to purchase another computer. That is an allowable expense, but you would still need to contact us for prior approval if that is not already in your budget narrative. Okay? Changes in your award amount, you would need to let us know in writing. And if we change your award amount, we will let you know in writing. Okay? All of that must be done in writing. Any extension of the grant time or contraction of the grant time. During this COVID-19 right now, last year we had to make some changes because we knew things were kind of cut off because everybody pretty much was told to go home in March. So that wasn't necessarily done in writing because it was done across the state. But anytime that there's a change in your individual grant, we need to know ahead of time. Changes to approved subgrant recipients. For instance, if you are at a school you're at a primary school that services K through second grade, and two schools have merged together. Of course, that is not your individual responsibility that two schools have merged together. But if two schools have merged together and you're now able to serve, instead of K through second grade, you're now able to serve up through fifth grade, and you want to increase your attendance by serving more students, you need to let us know in writing. Okay? In the budget amendment requests through gaps, okay, you would need to let us know the reason for the change. If you recall, when I said any changes from one category to another category, you would need to let us know in writing. So in that request, we are asking for the reason for the change. We need you to provide details, giving us the justification for the need for this change. The change must still be in keeping with the intent, goals, and objectives of the RFP and your approved grant application. We would need to know the impact on the budget. For instance, at this time of COVID-19, we may have some programs that are operating virtually rather than in person. And the impact on the budget could be that, well, because we're operating virtually, we don't have a need for transportation at this time. So you would justify your decrease in transportation funds by saying, okay, we're doing our program virtually right now. So the funds that we had scheduled for transportation, we want to use X amount of dollars and instead use it for supplies that we're going to send to the students or for a curriculum that we're going to use to supplement what we were doing in person. Okay, so basically we're asking that you explain why the funds have become available, as well as how you'll redirect those funds. And we need details, okay? For the program modification request or the budget modification, that would be your changes to key staff. That would be your changes to the scope of work. If there are site changes or anything like that, we would need to know the reason for the change. Of course, it would need to be detailed. And it will still also need to be in keeping with your RFP goals and objectives of the project. Okay. All program modification requests should be sent directly to your grant manager. Okay. Each grant manager has 10 business days to respond to your program modification request. Also to your budget request. We have 10 business days to do that. Now, granted, as grant managers, rather, we were not always in the office. Many times we had to go on site to various schools or various other programs for monitoring visits, etc. So as soon as you submit your program modification or as soon as you submit your budget modification, we may not necessarily be able to respond immediately. Okay, so we ask that you give us at least 10 business days to respond to budget requests as well as program modification requests. Okay, we appreciate that. Can be disallowed by our department, by the South Carolina Department of Education. Any expenditure that violates the terms and conditions of the grant award. For instance, it could be over the threshold. It could be expenditures in unapproved line items. Disallowed activities. It can be disallowed. We will notify you that this is disallowed and we will request a refund. Okay, now as grant managers, if we see this ahead of time, you can submit your refund and make the changes in gaps without too much of a issue. Okay, however, if you let it go and it gets to the auditing services, you're going to have to send the check. Okay, so as long as your program is in operation, if there's something that's disallowed and you have to do a refund in gaps, it can be quickly fixed. But please don't wait until it gets to auditing, because by then you'll have a discrepancy on your in your audit report, so it will be filed as part of your program that you had this deficiency, and you may have to resend funds. Are there any questions, comments, concerns? I pretty much finished.
Okay, Shonda, I do have, we are ahead of schedule actually, so
Yes.
this is a great time to ask any of the project directors if you have any questions of the three presenters, Amy with the five focus areas, or Jamal, the partnerships, or any questions for Shonda with the financial pitfalls. You can unmute yourselves. Our group is small enough today that we can, you can unmute yourselves and just ask your questions. And we'll give you time to kind of think about it and we'll talk about it. But I also wanted to mention, Shonda, and I'm not sure if it's in the PowerPoint. So if you have a chance to kind of talk about the forms that are in the back of the handbook, that would be a good thing to discuss with the group as well. And I also wanted to mention, we were talking about monitoring, and this presentation is being done as though everything was normal, back to normal. So in normal times, we would more than likely come on site and monitor your program, face to face. However, during the time of COVID, we've opted to just make everybody's monitoring visit virtual. So that means it'll be a desktop. We would just be talking to you as in a conference call. And so you don't have to be fearful about monitoring. It's just something that everybody has to do. And believe it or not, we as a state also get monitored through the U.S. Department of Education. And that is an unnerving experience when they show up at your door, but they give you advance warning. And that's the same thing that we do for you. And actually, we will send you in advance the actual monitoring questions in advance, so we won't catch you off guard. And it's never an aha, I got you moment. It's always, we're here to help you. And if we see anything that can be strengthened, somebody needs to unmute their phone. I'm here in the background. If there is anything that we can help you with to strengthen your program, that's why we're here. So I just wanted to touch on the monitoring part. And group, if there's anything else I've overlooked, again, we do have some free time, a little bit of time before we bring on our peer-to-peer presenters. And if any of the project directors have questions, now is the time you can ask your questions based on those the handbook presentation that we just had. And again, our group is small enough today that we will allow you to unmute your questions.
Ms. Patterson, how are you today?
Good.
I have a quick question. I know that, and I'm new, so I heard that you said that the ratio of students to teachers is 1 to 10. Would there be any time y'all give us time to build our program to get students, because we have a lot of students that are virtual, and then we're in the process of bringing all our kids that are face-to-face in the building instead of being hybrid, have them 4 days a week. Would y'all give us enough time to try to build it up before we have to cut staff?
Amy, do you want to tackle that? I know that was part of your, we can all kind of put our heads together with that one, but Amy, I'll let you kind of delve into that one too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be important. You're not going to want to, have one staff member and 2 students. So, but we understand that, like your classroom sizes may be smaller than 10 when you first start. So yeah, I mean, we're going to give you time, but it needs to be reasonable. I mean, this program, you just don't have the money to operate. And if your numbers are that low with operation, then we need to kind of look at it. But yeah, so I would probably hire kind of gradual. If you're, it just kind of depends on what your COVID plan is. How many students are you planning to serve, and what's that look like to your service number? So, I mean, we're going to be reasonable, but we're not going to be able to allow you to have one staff member with 4 students. So, and that really wasn't a good answer, but does anyone else have any input on that? And I mean, I talk to all my programs a lot. I would just really call your grants manager and just talk to them about it and say, hey, you know, today our enrollment's 22. We have 4 staff members. You know, how do you think that's going to look? So, and they'll work with you one-on-one and just help you just monitor it. But yeah, I mean, all of us have, you know, experience running programs at some level. So, you know, just talk to us directly and we'll help you through that. I mean, we understand that everything is really out of whack right now.
Yes, I agree, Amy. For sure. Ultimately and ideally, you would on day one hit the ground running with everything that you have in hand, everything that you said you would do, but that's in an ideal world. And right now we're just not in an ideal world. So just do the best you can with getting your numbers where they need to be. But I do echo what Amy said. It's just not feasible, you know, to pay, you know, 5 teachers for, you know, 3 students. That's just not, that's not reasonable. But and it's always important to just stay in constant communication with your assigned program manager. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, ma'am, it does. I just, you know, I have plans to grow our program to get the numbers where we need to be. It may take a little more time because of, you know, well, we just started. So we're calling kids, getting them in. We're in the process of trying to bring all our face-to-face kids to school every day, which will influx our numbers. It's just, you know, it's not going to happen as fast as we want it to.
I understand. Okay.
Joyce, this is
Yeah.
Latasha. There was a question in the chat box, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody saw it. The question was, in the midst of COVID and as things constantly change with phases of bringing students back to the classroom, how often should we submit updates to our grant manager? And so with that, we really want that if there's a major change that takes place, so if you're doing fully virtual and you find out, hey, next week we have to go to in-person, definitely send that to your grant manager as soon as you have that information. But we as grant managers, we're going to be implementing something new this year due to COVID and the constant changes that we know are taking place. Well, we're going to do check-ins with our programs monthly and just asking those quick questions. Still doing virtual. How are your numbers? How many do you currently have enrolled? So we're going to be constantly checking in with you guys too. But of course, if that's done monthly and you have something that comes up within your program that is major and we just checked on you the week before, definitely please send that to us as soon as you get that so that we can make that change and we can update it and know exactly what's going on in your program.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions that you saw in the chat box, Latasha?
No, ma'am, that was the only question.
Okay. All right, before we move on to our peer-to-peer, are there any other questions right now from any of the project directors on the call?
Joyce, I have one more comment in regard to enrollment and trying to get your service number. If you're not able to get your face-to-face service number, you might have to do a combination of face-to-face and virtual. So just kind of keep that in mind. I know some of my programs are going to serve a small percentage of their students face-to-face, and then they're going to have a virtual classroom as well. So just know that, you know, we're going to have to I have a feeling throughout the whole academic year, we're just going to have to meet our parents and where their needs are. And if our parents are opting for virtual, we might have to also offer a virtual component to meet our parents' needs. So just kind of know that we might have to do some blending of the two to reach the number of students that we need to.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Okay, we're going to move forward. If you have any other questions at this point, you can continue to put them in the chat box and they will be answered, or we will answer them at another point in the training. All right, so we're going to go on into our peer-to-peer presentations. And so these are two seasoned project directors. I know that Donna has been a 21st Century project director, I think 20 plus years. And I'm not sure about Amiko, but I know that she's a seasoned director as well. And so with that, we've asked them to, they spoke last week, so you had a chance to meet them last week. But we've asked them this week to come back and just kind of spend more time with, new project directors, kind of giving them some tips on, what they can do to have a successful program and what challenges to look out for. So with that being said, I'm going to ask Donna Paget from Lexington School District 3 to come on and talk with you all. Donna?
Thank you, Joyce. Let me see here. Okay, I hope everyone can hear me. Good morning to everyone. Thank you, Joyce and Shonda, for asking me to be here this morning. First, I'm going to talk about as if things were pre-pandemic and how I've just always kind of, as a project director, addressed each grant, new grant, and each year of the program. For me, what is needed in order to run a successful program is you need a dedicated project director and or site manager. You need dedicated staff, and you need support from your district office, your school administration, your day school teachers, parents, partners, advisory board, and even your school custodial staff. Basically, just everyone needs to all be on the same page, and the main focus is having and providing the best program that you can for the students who are enrolled in your program. The first thing that I suggest and recommend when you get a new grant is that you, as the project director, take that grant and you go through and you make a list of everything that was stated that you will do in your program in that grant. And then basically from that just kind of gives you a roadmap of all the things that you're going to need to do to meet your grant requirements, because what you say in your grant, you need to do. And like, I think it was Shonda, if something changes with that or you don't do it, then you need either program modifications or budget modifications. After you do all of those things, then you contact your advisory board. You set up a system for tracking your purchase orders and your invoices and all, so you can keep all of those things handy and ready for your grants manager, whether they come on site or doing a site, just a desktop review. You need a system for keeping your errors, the information that you're going to input in the error system. And let me go ahead and take just a short second here. I know I don't have these up on PowerPoint, but I will be sending this information that I'm discussing, which has a lot more detail and for you. And I'll send it to Shonda after this so she can send it out to anyone. Then it has my contact information. And so if you would like questions or any other questions about the documents or anything that we have, I'm more than happy to share. But the one thing that I find most crucial is to make sure that all of this, you have everything in place and you know exactly what you're going to do for your first day. Because for me, the first day of your program sets the entire tone for the year. And if you have to, put in those extra hours and get a lot of other people, delegate duties for people, just whatever you can to make that program the best it can be on the first day. And it just always helps to make it successful through the rest of the year. One thing that I've learned throughout the years, and this is really hard for me on a lot of times, is you have to be willing to make changes and step out of your box. And for all of us, especially this year, we are all stepping out of our box and just trying to come up with new ways to serve our students and our parents, and the best way that we can help them during this time of COVID. But I think it was Jamal was talking about, in normal years, walk through your program and make sure you do that every day, and just be very aware of the children in their classes, the staff in the classes. If you need to switch children because, they may react better to this teacher, and just notice, because basically your job is to provide a program that is the most successful, where the child can be successful and the most beneficial to that child. So just constantly be aware of the surroundings of your classes, of your staff, and of your students, and don't be afraid to make those changes. Sometimes all it takes is just one or two little things and makes both classes or other things a lot better for everyone involved. Just make sure, that you have a daily schedule and you follow that, and everyone tries to follow that as close as possible. You get your classrooms ready if you're in a school setting. Make sure you have your staffing down. One thing that I think is most important is to greet your students every day. They need to be made to feel welcome from the first minute they see you coming into your program. We all, once school ends, pre-COVID, we all gathered in the cafeteria, and I enjoyed it as much as the children, speaking to them every day and asking them how their day was. It's just one of those things where you never know which child is one that nobody's ever asked them, how was your day? They, may not hear that at home. And a lot of times, if they have something that's on their mind, they'll tell you. And it gives you an opportunity to get to know that child on an individual level, and just saying hello is sometimes all a child's need. Just make sure that you monitor your classrooms, you handle the discipline, when you do have discipline issues, and you keep up on the absentees of your students. What we usually do here is, if a student is absent, if we have not been notified by the office that they are going to be absent, we go on their attendance for the school day, see if they were here. If they weren't here, then we know we just didn't get notification. If they were at school, then we make a phone call to the parent. A lot of times children will just try to sneak out, or either the parent forgot to send a note. So it's just always very important on a daily basis to keep up with those absentees, to make sure you know where the children are. Because if the child was at school and the child slips out, then we're still kind of responsible for knowing where that child is if that parent thinks that that child is with us and they're not. So it's just very good to every day keep up with your absentees and why those children could possibly be absent. As far as attendance, we have learned that we tend to over-enroll some, just so we can keep the numbers that we're supposed to serve and to keep that 85% attendance rate percentage on a daily basis. So sometimes you can't necessarily do that, but that just kind of helps you. If you can, that helps you to be able to keep your numbers where they're supposed to be in for the number of students that you said you were going to serve. We do monthly newsletters, kind of just in every time when we have meetings with parents, drill in the thing of, your child needs to be with us. We need to have them here. It is important for the work that we're doing with them and to see results, that they need to be in the program. So just always make sure you're keeping up with your attendance. For behavior, you can focus, and as well as attendance, reward the children for their attendance, for good behavior, and it doesn't necessarily have to be material things. It's amazing what children will do for 10 minutes of extra recess, or an extra game, and then those kind of things, you can make those academic as well, so it's not just free time. So with behavior, we usually, if I talk to the child, if the behavior continues, then you call the parents. We try to not let things go prolonged and get the parents involved as soon as we can, so that way things can just kind of smooth over and everybody can get back on the right track. And usually we have very good results with parents being very supportive of what we're doing. You need to make sure that as far as sign-ins, that you have your parent sign-ins, your for their parenting programs. When you have family reading nights, make sure that you have a sign-in sheet for parents when they come and pick up your child. Anything that is involving the children and signing in that you might use on AIRS, which Samantha will go over a little bit later, you just need to have all that documentation for you to be able to input into AIRS. The other thing I was going to talk about is the procedure manual, and I have listed out, which you'll get the email. If you have any questions, please let me know. The procedure manual, we have ours divided into 8 sections. Our first one is our grant. It has anything we put in that section, our grant, original grant, and any other documentation that is related to our assurances, the pre-award audit, if you have the original award letter, all those types of things go in that section. Our second section we have is our fiscal, and that is like our yearly award notifications, our budget, any kind of purchase order listings, and things that have to do with the fiscal part. Our third section, we have communication, and that includes any communication we have with our parents as far as enrollment letters, waiting lists, registration forms, student progress reports, anything that involves the students that we want to communicate with parents, that goes in that section. In our partnership section, we have the listing of our partners, their organization, their contribution, the MOAs, and contracts. In our planning section, we have a list of our advisory board members, their affiliations, and the minutes of our meetings. We meet quarterly throughout the year, and those meetings are documented in that section. Our program and safety section is we have a copy of our daily schedule, our calendar, lesson plans, monthly snack menus, anything that's involved with our program, and then safety, our emergency plans, and an emergency exit map for doing the program. Staffing is the next to the last section. We always send a letter of interest to staff 1 year if they're interested the next year. And so then we kind of have a little bit of leadway on what kind of staffing needs we'll possibly need in the upcoming year. Anything that is involved with our staff orientations, professional developments, we have a listing with the SLED check sex offender list. That's also kept in there. Our staff resumes, their job descriptions, and our staff handbook is kept in there. In the transportation section, which is the last section, because by now this is kind of a large book, we have the listing of each bus and the students that are on that bus and the list of car riders. That way, if a bus breaks down, we know all the students are on that bus, and that we may have to contact those parents if there's a delay, or just to make them aware of anything that goes on in that bus. We also have just a separate couple of notebooks just because of all the information that we just keep in one area is about our attendance. And in that, we have the list of our students, their demographics. We keep a list of our 30+ day attendees, like our daily snack count sheets. When we keep attendance and daily snack of who all gets that. We keep their report card information in that. In the transportation separate binder, we have the individual student transportation sheets, which one is kept here, and then I keep one on my person in case I've already left for the day, and if there's an issue with the student of parent not being home, I've got the information to call along with the transportation director to try to find someone where we can get that child dropped off. Our last one is our activities, and in that notebook we keep all of our family, our field trips, our family events that we have, and any kind of special programs. We keep our attendance in there and actual signups for those programs for our for those particular things. We keep a separate IEP notebook for our students kept in a locked file, so that information is available when the grants manager comes to do our site visit. So that is pre-COVID. Now, for how we're operating this year, after our school district, which is, Joyce said, is out in Batesburg, Leesville, we have a primary school and elementary school program. And our district decided that we would start back with those two schools, starting back 5 days a week in person. Parents had the opportunity to choose their 5-day or virtual. And so once that was decided, I met with the school administrators to determine what was the best way and how after school could operate this year. So when students come to our schools in the morning, they go straight to their assigned homerooms. And that is basically where they stay all day, with the exception of they leave to go outside for recess a little bit. They have certain times that class as a group goes to the restroom. And then other than that, they eat breakfast, they eat lunch, their related arts, all that is done in the classroom. So that was in the district's reopening plan as a safety measure to try to keep those children within the same group and not cross mix anyone. So what was decided is that as far as after school program staff is that we would push into those classrooms at our at the staggered dismissal times. Our district has staggered dismissal times with our other schools, with the middle school and the high school. And so our staff, we're assigned to one particular classroom, and that's the same. We go in that same classroom every day. So we go in, we have students that we work with. And as a side note here, how we have recruited those students is our assistant principal at the beginning of the year when our students did come back, they took map testing in reading and math. And she identified the students that needed help. They wanted us to mainly focus on reading because the reading scores were low, and especially with the children missing 2 months of instruction from the previous year. So she identified those, and then those students that were in person, that came as an in-person, we got from that group, and then teachers gave us students based on their reading level. And so we are working with the low reading level students, and we push in, we work with those students every day on reading and grammar and whatever. The teachers have been very excited about us coming in and helping, and they even give more things for us to work with the students on. So that is working extremely well. We meet 4 days a week Monday through Thursdays, just like we have before. And we're doing that in both schools. And basically, we're kind of following the same pattern. We'll be sending home weekly packs with the children that they can work on things. And this will also help us with the family literacy component, because this will also be things that the parents, that they can all do together. And so that way, that's a way we've decided that we'll try to work in our family literacy component by having them do that when they go home. Our advisory board meeting, we're meeting by, emails and if I can learn other technology, but we're in communication with each other, and just, they're offering support in any way they can. And that's kind of a brief summary of what I have.
Okay, thank you, Donna. Next, we're going to have from the Urban League of the Upstate, Amiko Hendricks. And after Amiko finishes her presentation, we'll give you, if time permits, before we move on, give the project directors an opportunity to ask questions or continue to ask them in the chat box too. So with that, I'll turn this over to Amiko Hendricks from the Urban League of the Upstate. Amiko.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amiko Hendricks. I'm with the Urban League, and today I'll be talking about the virtual part. We have started our virtual program. It started back September 8th. And with our recruitment, we used email. We emailed our past clients that were involved. We sent out through the school's website information. Also, each teacher of the school, if they had a child to recommend, they would recommend it to the parents, and then they would contact us. So that was our form of recruitment. Starting out, it was a little slow due to the district was passing out laptops. And so the elementary was the last group to get laptops, which kind of made it hard. But after everybody started getting them out, our students started to get on right away. Also, one of the downfalls of virtual is those who have schools in rural areas is the internet problem. So we've been working with AT&T as well as the school district, helping with getting internet service for the students and their families in the area, hotspot boxes. All right. We offer homework help, tutoring help during our sessions on virtual. We use the Zoom program, and we offer sessions, 45-minute sessions apart. So we do homework help, tutoring. We have our math club, a STEM club, a science club. We also offer arts and craft and music. And I bet you're wondering how we're doing all that. Well, we deliver supplies to our students daily, along with snack. So when the school district right now meeting every other day, the AB schedule. So our students who are at home, we deliver those items to them. So all our students in the afternoon get their snack and all the supplies that they need for our classes as well. We offer virtual field trips, such as looking at the zoo in Columbia or Greenville, where I'm from, and Roper Mountain Science Center. They let us do virtual field trips there with them. We have a group that comes on and do exercise with our kids called Crunk Cardio, which the kids enjoy. We record all of our sessions, so that's how we keep up with our attendance with the teachers. So we record everyone and all the students that log on that day. That's how we know our attendance number. As far as paperwork, all paperwork is done electronically. So there's no physically touching or getting it from the families. They send everything back via email to me or to my site director. Let's see what else. Timesheets are all done electronically. We still meet with our parents and their families. For instance, we have family night once a month. And during that family night, which was this past September, our families did a cooking demonstration. So when we earlier for the families of what the supplies they may need. They got it. So when they got on that afternoon with us, they were all able to do the cooking demonstration together. And that was very fun and unique. I will leave my email address in the chat box. So if you have any other questions for me, you can always email me. I'm not going to try to prolong because we have to be done with our session at 11. If you have any questions now, you can.
Okay. Thank you, Amiko. Project directors or Latasha, do you have any questions in the chat box?
There are currently no questions in the chat box.
Okay. All right, project directors, if you have questions for Donna Paget or Miko Hendricks, now is your time. You can unmute yourselves and ask questions of them. Okay. You all did an awesome job. Nobody has questions. They all got it. They all got it. Okay, so thank you both for doing that. We appreciate that so much. Okay, it's 10:50. We will do a 10-minute break. So let's come back at 11. Don't log off, just, mute yourselves and, take a bathroom break or whatever. But we'll give you a 10-minute break and we'll be back at 11. All right, thanks. All right, everybody. Welcome back from that break. I hope you're refreshed and revived and ready to get some more learning in. So we have a little bit longer to go. I hopefully the things that we presented to you so far, you find them helpful and that you will be able to use them to help with your program management of your program. All right. So with that, next on the agenda, we're going to have Melissa Myers speak to you. She spoke with you last week, but she will give you some more details this week. Melissa is the director of the South Carolina Department of Office of Auditing Services. So with that, I'll turn it over to Melissa. Melissa, can you unmute yourself?
That might help, right? Because
Thank
I
you.
was steady talking. Okay, hello everyone. How are you doing? As Joyce said, I think she said that some of you were already a part of this meeting on last week, so this really just might be a repeat for some of you, but sometimes it does help to have a refresher. Okay, so topics, same topics as last time. We're talking about again about the 2 CFR Part 200, about the annual request for information, audits that are performed by the Office of Auditing Services, adequate supporting documentation, common audit findings and some results, indirect costs, and resources. Okay, first, the 2 CFR Part 200 is the Uniform Administrative Requirements, Cost Principles, and Audit Requirements for Federal Awards. We commonly refer to this as the UGG. It's again contained in 2 CFR Part 200, and you can find it in the Electronic Code of Federal Regulations that is online. One important part of this regulation is that it states that non-federal entities expending $750,000 or more in federal funds are required to have a single audit. A single audit is an audit of your financial statements, as well as an audit that concentrates on some federal awards that have been expended by the entity. Written procedures for determining the allowability of costs in accordance with federal cost principles and the terms and conditions of the federal award is one requirement in the UGG, as well as written procedures for cash management to include a timely request for reimbursement of expenditures. And also you must have documented procedures for procurement which reflect federal, state, and local laws and regulations. And if you recall during the pre-award audit process that some of you went through, we did ask for these procedures. Also, you must have written standards of conduct covering conflicts of interest and for governing the performance of its employees engaged in the selection, award, and administration of contracts. You must disclose in writing in a timely manner all violations of federal criminal law involving bribery or gratuity violations that could potentially affect the federal award that was issued to you. Also, this states that an official authorized to legally bind a non-federal entity must certify on annual and final fiscal reports or vouchers requesting payment that by signing this report, I certify to the best of my knowledge and belief that the report is true, complete, and accurate in the expenditures, disbursements, and cash receipts are for the purposes and objectives set forth in the terms and conditions of the federal award. I am aware that any false, fictitious, or fraudulent information or the omission of any material fact may subject me to criminal, civil, or administrative penalties for fraud, false statements, false claims, or otherwise. And the citation is listed here where that is found specifically in the UGG. So just make sure that before you sign off on any report for your grant that you remember that your certification signature means that you're saying that this is true and that you understand that you could be liable for civil and criminal penalties if you're signing off on documentations for the grant that you know are false and fictitious. Annually, our office will request some information for our subrecipients. For our non-LEAs, every year we send out a federal program questionnaire, which is an internal control questionnaire that we use to assess how strong your internal controls are, to see if you have proper procedures in place for managing your grant award. Also, with that request is also in the letter, we ask that you will also please send your annual audit report. As I stated earlier, if your entity has expended at least $750,000 in federal awards, that audit report should be a single audit report. If you did not meet that threshold, then we still would like to see a copy of whatever annual audit report that was performed for your entity. If for some reason you don't have an annual audit report, then we request that you will send us your year-end financial statements, your IRS Form 990 that was filed for the year, bank statements, or your general ledger. LEAs are required by state law to have an annual audit report submitted to the SCDE. Normally, the deadline is December 1st for each fiscal year. This year, the deadline has been extended due to COVID, January 15th. So you will receive a letter. LEAs will receive a letter reminding you of that audit requirement. And again, same thing, if you're spending at least $750,000 or more in federal awards, it will be a single audit. If not, then it will be a financial statement audit. But LEAs are required by state law to submit that report. So the OAS, well, we conduct both pre-award audits and limited scope audits. Pre-award audits are performed for new or existing subrecipients of competitive or discretionary grant awards. And with this process, there is a pre-award audit questionnaire that is already embedded in the request for proposal for applicants of these awards that everyone is requested to complete and submit with your application. There's also a review of written policies and procedures and controls. And if you have a grant currently through the State Department of Education, we ask that you send us documentation that you maintain for that current grant so that we can perform a cursory review of that grant and how you're managing and handling the documentation for that grant award. We also perform limited scope audits. A limited scope audit is performed after you have been awarded a grant. We use a risk-based approach every year to determine which entities will receive a limited scope audit. And also we can perform these audits based on a direct request from the program office. The objective of this audit is to determine whether grant funds that were reimbursed to your entity already for the program were allowable, necessary, reasonable, and allocable based upon the grant award agreement and state and federal laws and regulations. And back to limited scope audits, we would actually look at a claim form or claims that were reimbursed to your entity during the year and ask you to submit whatever documentation that you maintain to support that claim that was filed. Audits can be performed as a desk audit or as an on-site audit. If it's a desk audit, we will ask you to submit information to us and we'll review that information and constantly be in contact with you during the desk audit process to respond to any questions that we might have while we're performing the audit. And if it's on site, then we will actually go to where your entity is located to perform that audit. For both audits, we're going to have written policies and procedures. your general ledger and documentation to support a sample of expenditures. If it's an on-site audit, we may ask for you to go ahead and submit some of that information to us in advance of us coming so that we can go ahead and begin our review in the office or right now at our homes, and then let you know what we will need once we arrive, so you will have that for us to make that process a little bit more efficient. Advance notification will be distributed to the entity for either type of audit, and that information will include the audit period, the dates of the visit, and the documentation that will be requested. So what are we looking for when we say adequate supporting documentation? If the claim is for payroll and employee benefits, we are looking for timesheets. We're looking for personnel activity reports or semi-annual certifications. We're looking for payroll registers, labor history reports, pay stubs, salary agreements, job descriptions, and documentation of the benefit rate of each type of benefit. The PARs and semi-annual certifications, explain that a little bit more in detail. I think everything else is pretty much self-explanatory. But if any employee is funded in whole or in part by a federal award, either they should maintain either a monthly personnel activity report or a semi-annual certification. If the employee works solely on one federal cost objective, the only thing you're doing all day, all year long is working on the 21st Century Grant, then every 6 months you should have a certification statement that says from the periods of January 1 through June 30, whatever the applicable period is, I certify that I, Melissa Myers, worked 100% of my time on the 21st Century Grant. And then that certification statement should be signed by the employee, and it should also be signed by the employee's direct supervisor or someone who has firsthand knowledge of what the employee actually worked on. Now for the PAR is monthly report versus the semi-annual certification being, a 6-month report. The PAR is maintained for any employee who works on more than one federal award or who works on a state award and then a federal award, or just has multiple cost objectives that the employee is supporting. With the PAR, again, you need it's a monthly statement. It should break down what activities you actually worked on every month and show the percentage of time that was allocated between the federal grant or grants, or the federal grant and the non-federal grant, whatever your different cost objectives are. It should show the percentage of time worked on each of those cost objectives during the month. And again, this also should be signed by the employee and the supervisor.
Melissa, it's Joyce. I have one question. Do you mind?
Sure.
Can you go back and talk about, can a timesheet include information on it that would make it a PAR?
It can. It's a good question. If your timesheet has all of the required elements of the PAR, you definitely can use your timesheet as a PAR. And we do have a guidelines memo that's actually has just been updated and should be posted soon, so that you all can send to your sub-recipients, Joyce, that outlines all the requirements of the PAR, the requirements of the timesheet, and you definitely can use your document as a multi-purpose record if it has the elements of each one.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, if your claim was for purchased services, then you should make sure that you have contracts for the entity that you're contracting with for the purchase service. The contract should include the period of performance or the different dates that the service or services are being performed. It should have a detailed description of the services to be rendered. It also should have the contract amount, the different payment terms, authorized signatures, and it should be supported by invoices to support any payments made, and again by timesheets. If you sought reimbursement for supplies through the grant, then you should make sure that you maintain purchase orders, requisitions, invoices or receipts, good receipts, and packing slips to support any supplies that you purchase. Okay, I'm going to discuss some common audit findings and results of some our recent audits. We have noted a lack of required documentation to support personnel salary costs, and this means we're not seeing the timesheets or the PARs or the certifications that we expect or that are required to be maintained. Supporting documentation does not adequately support non-personnel costs submitted for expenditure reimbursement, which means that you might have some timesheets, but the timesheets do not support what was actually claimed by the entity. Unallowable costs. You're expending the grant funds for items that's just not allowed by the grant. So make sure you refer to the RFP and any other program rules and regulations that you have to make sure that the expenditures that you are expending for the grant are allowable expenditures. Failure to adhere to the approved budget. You may have in your budget, you're going to have 2 teachers, but then you sought reimbursement for 3 teachers. Expenditure reports submitted for reimbursement before expenditures were both incurred and paid. This means that you are seeking reimbursement for expenditures that you have not even incurred yet, or claims that's being made in advance, and that is unallowable. Inadequate internal controls over equipment purchased with grant funds. You might not have the proper tracking system for your equipment that you purchased with the grant. Your required written procedures under 2 CFR Part 200 are not present or omits the required language. I explained in one of our earlier slides what some of those required procedures are, and we've noted that some entities are not maintaining those required written procedures. Also, expenditures being incurred and paid outside of the period of availability. You may be seeking costs that were prior to the effective date or pre-award costs, which are unallowable unless the program office specifically approves them, or we've noted that there have been expenditures after the grant period has ended, which is also unallowable. So what happens, once we have these audit findings? Some things that happen are the corrective action plan that will be required for any finding that's noted. We want to see what corrective action that you plan to implement, the date of the implementation, the name of the person that's going to be responsible for implementing the corrective action plan. We want to see, with many cases, you have to repay the funds that have been reimbursed to your entity. It's possible that you could have negative press coverage of the audit. You possibly could be reported in the Federal Awardee Performance and Integrity Information System, which as FAPIS. You could be listed as being suspended or debarred, and it's possible that you could be turned over to SLED or the USDE's Inspector General's office. And since I think some of you have already heard this last week, so I'm going to go over all these audit findings, but just know that we have had several audits recently that of our 21st Century Grant Fund sub-grantees that has resulted in significant amounts being reimbursed to the SCDE. This is one of the last ones. We sought reimbursement for $45,440.81. Another one, we had reimbursement amount of $255,000. Another, we had reimbursement of over $47,000. And these were like over the past 3 years for these audits. And there are some other examples in here of other audit findings that has been recently had made by entities, who were sub-granted the 21st Century funds. I know my time is about up. Just indirect costs quickly. Indirect costs are expenses of doing business that are not readily identifiable with the activities of a grant or a contract, but there is a benefit for the program. So you can charge indirect costs for these type items, and examples of these items include accounting, auditing, budgeting, payroll, human resources, and purchasing. If you want to charge, well, LEAs already have an indirect cost rate that's automatically calculated by our office. If you are a non-LEA and you decide that you want to charge indirect cost to your grant, this shows the items that would have to be submitted to our office: financial statements, general ledger, org chart, schedule of total funding, your RS Form 990, a chart of accounts, and listing of equipment purchased during the year. And once you submit this information to our office, then we will begin the negotiation process and issue you an indirect cost rate. These are just some resources for you: the funding manual, our financial accounting handbook, that guidelines memo, the memo, one memo from last year is now on the website. Again, we have just updated that memo, and that will be posted soon. And we also do a subrecipient risk assessment process that I didn't mention, but you can review those procedures at this link also. So are there any other questions?
If so, I'm going to ask you to put them in the chat box, and then we're going to move on to our next presenter. Thank you so much, Melissa. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Pearlie Gant. Sorry, I didn't put my face on. Next, we have Pearlie Gant, who is with the Department of Education's Grants Accounting Office. And Pearlie will speak to you about our GAPS system. And this is the system that will allow you to put your claims in. So Pearlie, I'm going to pass this over to you.
Ms. Pearlie, we can see your content. So if you want to go ahead and run your PowerPoint, we can see it.
Pearlie, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. You're muted. Can you unmute yourself? There you go.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't see your presentation, but I can hear you.
Let me bring it back up. Bear with me just a few minutes.
Okay. So you just need to share your screen. There you go.
Trying to get my PowerPoint. Is it coming?
It's trying.
Okay, that's not it, Ms. Pearlie. You would need to clear that out. That's the whiteboard.
Yes. I'm gonna just give me about 5 minutes. I'll bring the presentation back up again. Somehow it's going in and out.
Okay. So if you'll close the whiteboard and open up your PowerPoint and then share your screen. And then a box should pop up where you can click that screen for your PowerPoint.
Apologize for the inconvenience.
That's okay. So if you'll just open up your PowerPoint, we can see your screen. Okay, if you'll close that, if you'll stop sharing content.
Okay, let me.
So you would go back to Teams.
Going back. Okay, going back. Let's get back out. Here I am back on Teams.
Yes, where my picture is, open that up, okay? Close your share screen. That's the box with the X in it at the top. If you'll close that, and is your PowerPoint already open?
I'm going to reopen it. It was.
Okay.
Let me go back and reopen it. Okay.
All right. Now try and share your content. The square with the arrow at the top. And your PowerPoint should be highlighted.
Okay. It's not showing. I see the PowerPoint presentation.
Well, if you feel comfortable with it, Pearlie, if you just want to talk it through, and then
Okay.
we'll send them a copy of your PowerPoint.
Well, I'm impatient. Very, very impatient.
Okay. Apologize for all the inconvenience this morning. Would like to say good morning to everyone. Again, my name is Pearlie Gant, and I would like to share with you concerning our grants accounting processing system. This system is where we use a processing system to process and reimburse you for your expenditures. After you get the grasp of the system, I believe most people would say that it's very user-friendly, and I tend to agree with them. In order to function within this system, there must be 3 roles that you need to have. You need to assign these roles to 3 different people, and each person must have a different role. And also, I'd like to remind you that these roles are grant specific. You need to have a grant coordinator who enters the budget and the budget amendments. You also need to have a grant finance approver person who will approve the budget and also enter the expenditures. You will need a finance approver This person will approve all of the expenditures. It is very important, again, that I state that the person should only have one role within the grant. If an individual is assigned more than one role, the system will override one role for another. For example, if a person is given the grant coordinator role and the finance approval role on the same grant, the finance process will override the grant coordinator process, and therefore the person who was initially supposed to enter the budget will not be able to enter the budget. Each person that's assigned in GAPS, you must create an account in the South Carolina Department Member Center. Once you've created your community user account, you have to go in and follow the instructions. And by the way, this is out on our website, www.ed.se.gov. Once you get there, just simply follow the instructions to create your community user account. The subrecipient contact person must email the list of 3 individuals that you have set up for these designated roles. Send their emails to Grants Accounting at grantsaccountinged.se.gov. Once we get that information, we will set those particular individuals up with the specified roles. The first thing in this particular system is that you allocate your budget. Your budget's been allocated by SCDE, and it will be entered again by the person with the grants coordinator role. GAPS itself will only allow budget to be entered up to the total amount of the allocation. After the grants coordinator enters the budget, it will workflow to the next person that has been assigned the grants finance role at the subrecipient finance level for approval. All budgets will have to be approved by your program office. Expenditures, nothing else can be done until your budget has been approved. And this is very important because a lot of times we get cases where people are trying to enter their expenditures and they're calling and they're inquiring why they can't do so. And the fact of the matter is, when we go back, we find out that their budget has not been approved by the program office. Whenever you're into GAPS, you will find the specific screens that you select your grant. Also select the entity that you're working on. And once you have selected that information, you can go on to the next screen. As I said, this is very user-friendly. One of the key things we want to remind each and every one is that the information that is put into GAPS, that's loaded into GAPS, is uploaded, basically taken from your GAN. So therefore, it's very important that you familiarize yourself with the dates of the award period and also the final report dates. The expenditures need to occur within your award period. The final report date basically is the date that we need to have all of the expenditure reports submitted to us. But your monies, your budget, all of that should have already been spent during the award period. So it's important that you do keep your GANs in front of you and have that information available. any type of budget amendments can be done after the budget has been approved. And keep in mind, the amendments will have to be done by the person that has that particular role, which would be your grant coordinator. When we go into gaps, another screen we would look at would be the amount of grant allocations. This amount has to be budgeted and approved before you can enter expenditure. So in this particular example, we see that we were allocated 78,000. None of that has been budgeted, so it still remains unbudgeted. So therefore, at this point, you would not be able to try to enter any expenditures. Once your budget is fully allocated, then you are able to, in this example, it shows allocation amount, budget amount, unbudgeted amount is 0. So that means all of the budget has been fully allocated. So you can begin to enter expenditures. The next screen is basically a budget summary. Here, it just tells you it's color, not so much in this screenshot, but it tells you what's approved, what's pending, and what's awaiting approval. And also it gives the different function option codes, how the money has been budgeted, and how much has been budgeted in the different areas. Next screen. The status of this budget in this particular instance has been approved. So everything that you're able to see on your side, we're able to see on our side. So a lot of times, sometimes people tend to think that it's showing one thing in grants accounting and something different on their area. But no, same information will be seen. As far as budget amendments, our next screen, we follow the same process that the initial budget was entered and processed through. The system will check the budget as each line is entered, and it will not allow a decrease to a budgeted line item that will exceed available budget on that item. One thing I like to mention as a side note is that please make sure that when you're entering items into gaps, whether it's being budget or expenditures, it's important that you not only create the item and save it, but you must also submit it. Because if you do not click on that submit button, then this information will not flow through the next person. And so therefore, again, we get questions. I saved it, I created it, but the next person did not get the information. Well, you need to submit. Do not forget to submit. Expenditure reporting, here again, once you have your budget, once it's been approved, once it's been fully allocated, then you can begin entering your expenditures. You can go through the finance tab. The entry will not be accepted if the budget isn't available. So if you do not have enough budget to cover the expenditure, the system will let you know it will not accept it. The final approval, once program office approves the budget, the finance person has approved it, and it comes to grants accounting. It will come to the accountant in grants accounting to process this particular expenditure for reimbursement. Within our system, there are various reports that are available. There are two types that we particularly focus on: budget and expenditures. We can run reports to let you know how much budget you have left, how much you've already spent, There are times when we have to go back and do reports on expenditures to find out which particular entities have gotten certain dollars and which have not. So these reports are available in GAPS. Our next slide shows once you get into GAPS, you can sort them by clicking on the different headings. However you want to manipulate the system to get what you need, to extract the information, you can do it. You can do Excel reports, you can export it to and filter, however, whatever information you need to pull out of those reports, you can do that. It's very important that after the final report date, the report menu is it's the only way to get any grant details. So you will have to go through the reporting side of it to pull information once the final report date has passed. Next slide. This screen just basically tells you where you can go into the admin tab. Sometimes your screen may look a little different, but you will go through the admin tab and then go to the report tab to pull the information that you need. Next slide. This is just basically a screen where you like to check the status of a budget, where you actually go in and bring up your grant, the sub-recipient, whichever you're looking at, your sub-program numbers, and if you want to do a budget summary, a budget details report, budget status report, all of that, our system gives you the capability to do so. This screen, again, just basically goes to show you how you can retrieve the different information that you will need to get regarding your budget. And also, as I stated early, not only just budget reports, but expenditure detail reports as well. Next slide. If your budget or a particular grant has expired and is no longer active, you will have to click on the button that says inactivated subgrants if this grant is no longer an inactive status. So therefore, a lot of times people don't know that and they feel like, what's happened? I know I had it previous years, but I need to go back and retrieve some information. So we ask that you go in and just simply click on the buttons for inactivated subgrants. Next slide. Just an example of some of the ways to retrieve expenditure reports by going through the report tab. Next slide. Reimbursement of expenditures. Weekly payments are processed on Wednesdays. The cutoff for expenditure entry approval for inclusion in the weekly payment is Friday at 5:00 p.m. for most weeks. On Tuesdays, we do our weekly cash draws. Wednesdays, you will either receive your direct deposits or paper checks, however your entity has asked us to set it up for them. We want to let you know that this is, next slide, subject to change. Holidays, any unforeseen circumstances may impact this normal process. We ask that you reconcile your books if you have internet expenditure and it was approved by your finance approval before the close of business on Friday at 5. The payment should be in your treasurer's office by the end of the next week. If you have any questions concerning budgets, budget amendments, we ask that you contact the program office. Anything that's related to expenditures, you can send us an email. We also ask that you please send a screenshot to the Grants Accounting mailbox, Grants Accounting ed.sc.gov email box. And a lot of times it helps us to see what you're trying to get done And therefore, we ask if all possible to send that screenshot. So often that also helps to cut down on the amount of time that we can get a response back to you. Next slide. Next slide. We also have training videos. So you can go out on the website and also retrieve this information. There's tutorials also available on our website. And we ask that you utilize that because a lot of times it's proven to be very helpful and also not only helpful, but a lot of times you find out, oh, okay, I can get this and I won't even have to contact Grants Accounting, but we don't mind. We ask you to feel free to contact us. We're here to be assistance to you all. Hopefully this information has been beneficial to you. Are there any questions at this time?
I'm going to ask Pearlie if they have questions to put them in the chat box for because of time constraints. So if you have questions for Pearlie, please put them in the chat box. All right, thank you, Pearlie, so much. Next on the agenda,
Thank you.
We have Samantha Snigowski. She represents AIR, which is American Institutes for Research, and they are our state evaluator. And Samantha will talk to you because this is also a very important component of the grant. All the data that's captured in our data hub at the state level also gets transferred up to the U.S. Department of Education's data hub. So Samantha, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Joyce. One moment while I get my PowerPoint up and running here.
Oh, and I'm sorry, Samantha, I know that we kind of cut into your time, so we can give you some extra time if you need it.
No worries. How much time do I have?
We can give you an extra 10 minutes. So, you know, if you want to end it, you know, if you need to go to, you know, 12:20, that's fine.
Okay.
12:25.
Yeah, okay. I'm not sure we will get there, but we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
Well, thank you again, Joyce, and thank you everyone for being on the call. It's nice to virtually meet you. Congratulations on your new grants this year. As Joyce said, my name is Samantha Snigowski. I am a senior researcher with American Institutes for Research. We are the statewide evaluator for the 21st Century Program, and this will be our 5th year providing that service. So it's been great getting to know everyone over the course of the last 4 years, and looking forward to working with all of you and making sure we're able to tell the story of 21st century. Just really quickly, again, I am Samantha Snigowski. My colleague Femi Vance, who also plays a crucial role in our statewide evaluation activities, was not able to join us this morning, but I wanted to give a moment to allow us to introduce ourselves. So we've got some kind of fun pictures here on the screen, and just a little bit more about myself. A unique tidbit is I like to hunt, and it's archery season here in Michigan, which is where I'm located. And this is an actual photo, the one of the tree, where I'm able to spend my weekends in October and November. So that's something that I like to do. Femi lives in San Diego, and she was recently able to take a vacation and take her son to the San Diego Safari Park. So those are some things that we've enjoyed doing. So hopefully that just gives you a little sense of who we are. A couple of our topics today, as a new grantee, we do want to cover a support site that we have created that have compiled a lot of different sources of information together to kind of be a one-stop shop for you to go to get support, especially resources related to COVID-19. There have been a lot of things that have been coming out from multiple sources, whether it's the After School Alliance or Y4Y. just general guidance around COVID-19 in general. We will have that on the site, and I will kind of briefly walk us through that. I do want to highlight some potential professional development opportunities that we are thinking about over the course of the next couple of months and what those might look like. And then also revisit this conversation around family engagement. Amy touched a little bit on this morning, and I want to spend some time really kind of describing how we're thinking about that in terms of data collection. And then I will take us through just a brief overview of the Data Hub, where we capture all of the information that we need for statewide evaluation, and then also for our federal reporting, and just kind of give you a brief intro to that and talk about some additional trainings, more in-depth trainings that we'll have coming up a little bit later this month. Okay, so one of the things that I do want to touch on is our support site. I'm going to go ahead and get out of my PowerPoint and get into the web browser here really quickly so I can walk us through that. I'm also, if I can, I'm going to try this here. Oh, let's see here. I want to go ahead and put the location URL for this in the chat box. So if you're interested in taking a look at that and moving through that with me, you can go ahead, or we can take a look at it later. But it is there in the chat box for you to review at your leisure. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So as I said, this is our one-stop shop for a lot of things 21st century related. We do have a home page, and here on the home page is where we will update this information with anything that is coming up in the month. We're still working on getting this content up here now. We've got a couple of things that will be coming up, especially if we decide to move forward with some of the professional development opportunities that I've mentioned. We'll also highlight anything that's coming up specifically from entities like the U for Youth. And then we also put here on the home page just really quick links for things that we think you as a program director might need access to. So right here on the home page. So things related to professional development, and then also some more quick resources related to COVID-19, including the reopening guidance, and then also guidance from the CDC and the After School Alliance. So that's kind of our landing page, but we've got a number of different other areas of this support site. The 21st century guidance is one of them. So we have an overview here where we're taking a look at important links where you might need to locate resources. But really the majority of the guidance page is related to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we've got updates from the department, and then also other updates and guidance from other entities. I should note that anything that we've listed here under additional updates and guidance, it's in no particular order other than alphabetical. So hopefully we can more easily find that if we're looking for resources from a particular source. The other thing that we will add here, we'll add another tab here that will highlight some of the resources that have been available through this particular meeting, and then the meeting last Friday. So we'll be adding that content here as well for you to refer back to. We do have a data and reporting section. So this is our overview page where we've just had some guidance on COVID-19 reporting, and then data collection and resources during COVID-19. So this was a webinar that we did a couple of months ago that you can take a look at that presentation. We also have a link to our data hub, which we will be talking about a little bit later. But we wanted to make sure that we put that link here so that if you're kind of using this support site as your one-stop shop, you can easily get to that link without having to remember where it is. So it's all in one place. And then we also are posting our statewide evaluation reports on this page. So if you're curious about that, you can go and access them here. I do want to highlight our continuous quality improvement resources. Now, some of you who are maybe a newly funded grantee but are returning or have had experience with operating 21st century programs in the past might have heard about this. But we are implementing a pilot of programs who are participating in a continuous quality improvement process. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, but I wanted to note that the information that we are using as a part of that process is all located here in case you're curious. But I do want to talk a little bit more about the professional development area. So we've broken the professional development section down into a couple of different areas. So looking at some more of the foundational youth development trainings. So we have some things here from our Beyond the Bell series, the Weichert Center for Youth Program Quality, which is a partner that we work with for the continuous quality improvement process. Their website is located here. And then we know that facilitation of distance learning is probably of great interest at the moment, given that we've got different types of program delivery models amid the COVID-19 pandemic. So we have added some resources here that might help you brainstorm about how you approach that in your program. Again, this is in no particular order other than alphabetical. But there are quite a few resources here that help us learn a little bit more about the facilitation of virtual learning. And then finally, we've also got it broken down into lesson plan and activity items. So there are a lot of resources here on this page, and this is kind of more general resources that you can take a look at to think about how you might structure your activities or get new ideas for programming. And then, of course, our points of contact here. So right now we have Joyce listed as our contact through the department. And then myself, my colleague Femi Vance are listed here in case you need to reach out to us. And then our colleague Ariel Lentz, who has had a big hand in the creation of the support site, her contact information is also located here. So I'm going to go ahead and pause there. That was just a brief overview of the support site and see if we have any questions. Looks like some folks are getting an Betsy is getting an error message, and yes, you might need to check your settings. I know sometimes, if we specifically are working on a district computer, there might be some security settings in place that might not allow certain websites. So that's one thing to take a look at. But if you do have any issues in reaching the site after we've kind of problem solved around any security setting issues, please contact us and let us know. Okay, Betsy is in now. Okay, awesome, great. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions, so I'm going to return us back to our PowerPoint and talk a little bit about some professional development opportunities that we're thinking about for the fall. So typically during this time, we would be working with our pilot of programs in terms of getting ready to implement the continuous quality improvement process. But we know that with all of the challenges related to COVID-19, there are certainly other things on your minds at the moment. So we also wanted to think about what are the most immediate needs that you might all have regarding offering programming. So we wanted to pitch this idea of a professional development learning community that we would essentially pick a few topics to take a look at over the next couple of months. It would be 1 hour webinar a month with a specific topic. We would look at some pre-recorded training sessions and then have an opportunity to discuss those specific topics. So we know, again, that you have a lot on your plates at the moment. So one thing that we do want to do is gauge your interest and your availability to think about participation in a professional learning community over the next several months. So what I'm going to do right now is post a link to a short poll in the chat box where it's a 3-question poll asking about your interest in participating in such an opportunity, also talking about whether or not you think it's feasible for you and or your program staff to participate in something like this. And then also, if so, what are some of the topics that you are interested in? We've given a few on the form as ideas. So things like social and emotional learning or school day connections, but have also provided space for you to enter any ideas that you are thinking that you need additional support on in terms of programming and activities, program administration and activities. So we hope that you will take a moment to fill that out. Again, it's just 3 questions. And based on our responses that we get today, we had this form go out to our participants on last week's call as well. We'll take a look and see what folks are saying and make some determinations from there, and of course be in touch with any opportunities that are coming up over the next couple of months. Okay, I do want to revisit this idea of family engagement. So as Amy mentioned this morning, this is part of the 5 areas that we're focusing on, but it's also a part of the ESSA legislation regarding the purpose of the program. So the 3rd purpose of the 21st Century Program is to make sure that we're offering the families of students served by the community learning centers those opportunities for literacy and other educational development. So as we get into this new program year, we want to be thinking about how we're making sure that we're offering services and supports to our adult family members. And some of the ways that we have thought about this is here on your screen. These are all things that we could consider for family engagement. So things like GED prep, job skills training, literacy classes, parenting classes. We know a lot of folks offer family nights, and so we kind of consider those under the celebrations category. So those are some things that we're thinking about. And I guess I would encourage you to refer back to your grant application to kind of figure out what you said you were going to offer as a part of your application as a starting point. Of course, one of the things that we want to consider is any adjustments that we need to make because of the COVID-19 pandemic. For those of you who were not on the call last week, we mentioned that we did conduct several interviews over the late spring and early summer with existing program directors, just to get a sense of how programs were responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, what they were thinking about moving into the summer, and then also how they were thinking about plans moving forward into this current program year. And one of the things that we were finding is that some of these traditional family engagement activities were things that were not necessarily could be happening during the school closures and whatnot. So we wanted to make sure that we're opening up the space to think about other family engagement activities in relation to how we're supporting parents and adult family members. So some of those other things could be thinking about how we are providing access to food, financial support, counseling, making connections for things like medical access. A lot of what we've heard, not just in South Carolina, but with some of the other states that we're working with, is that during this COVID-19 pandemic, the 21st Century programs are really playing a very large connection role for connecting adults and families to other services. So we do want to make sure that we're capturing all of your efforts related to your adult supports. So having said that, I will get into a little bit how we collect that information as I give an overview of the Data Hub. All that to say, just want to make sure that we're still being mindful of the need to serve our parents and adult family members, even amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat box, so I'll give it a couple of seconds here to see if anybody has a question, and then I'll move on to the Data Hub introduction. All right, nothing coming through, so I'll go ahead and move us along. For our introduction today, I don't want to go into a whole lot of detail into each and every section of the Data Hub, but more so give you an overview of the data submission modules, the kinds of things that we're looking for in there, the reports section, talk a little bit about some of the resources and training opportunities, and then also the timeline for when those training opportunities will be coming up here in the next few weeks. So one moment while I get out of my PowerPoint again and get us to the web browser. Now I should note that I am working from our testing site, which is designated by the UAT. For those of you who have had access to the system in the past, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't trying to copy and paste our URL up here, since this is our testing site. We're in the process of rolling over certain information from the prior year's submission into the new reporting period. So the actual site will be opening back up here in probably the next week or so. So just wanted to note that. So this is our login page, and really the purpose of this Data Hub is to serve. So first and foremost, we want to make sure that we are able to collect all of the information necessary for us to report to the federal government. So the Data Hub has been set up in a way where we are collecting all of the required information from the federal government. And the federal government has its own data collection system, but the fact that we are able to enter information into this system, and on our end, we're able to connect this information to that federal system, that doesn't require you as a subgrantee to go into that federal system. So we're eliminating that burden from you. The other reason for this is also to support our statewide evaluation efforts. So we have an understanding of what the story is for South Carolina 21st century programs. And then, of course, as kind of a monitoring tool from your end, we've got some reporting features in here that I'll share with you in just a moment that can give us some information about, what our attendance is looking like over the course of the year, and just gives you some information you can take action with if, you see your numbers are really high during specific periods over the course of the year, reflecting back on what was happening during those moments. Or conversely, if you see your attendance going down for some reason, it just gives you some actionable information. Okay, so as I mentioned, I do want to just overview the data submission modules. And then I also want to spend a little bit time here in the reporting section to show you some of the things that are available here. So I'm going to go ahead and get into my test grantee. Generally on this page, when you log in, as a program director, you will see any and all grantees that you are associated with. So you might have one grantee or you might have multiple. For each grantee, we have a data submission section and a survey section, which the surveys I won't cover today. We'll have additional training on that later in the year. But data submission, we have several different modules that we're taking a look at. We want to understand first and foremost, what are your operations looking like? So logistics, do you operate during the summer, during the fall, during the spring? If so, what are the start and end times for your programs? Things of that nature. The thing that I would point out about most of the modules in this section is that we follow a summer and then a school year with fall and spring term timeline. That is aligned to the federal reporting timeline. So very basic information here on operations. One of the things that we do want to point out here that we've added for this year that will help us understand a little bit more about how you are operating because of the COVID-19 pandemic is this question here, basically around the program delivery model for that term, whether you're in person, virtual only, or hybrid. And we've added that to each of the terms so we can have an understanding of how that might shift and fluctuate along with the shifts and fluctuations of the COVID-19 pandemic itself. So that's one thing that we've added to general operations. We ask you to report on staffing, numbers of staff based on your staffing model in each of the terms that you say that you have programming. So here I'm seeing only fall and spring because back in my operations section, I said I didn't have a summer program. For those of you who are brand new, that will likely be the case for you since you received your funding very recently. Feeder schools are essentially the schools where students who are coming to your program spend their school day. So that might actually be the same school that you're operating in. But this also gives us understanding for community-based organizations or faith-based organizations that maybe operate in a church where you might have multiple schools feeding into your center location. We have an activities section where we ask you to go in and report all of the types of activities that you are offering to your students and your adult family members. The addition of the adult family member types of activities is something that we've done for this year so we can have an understanding of what those look like. And that's a little bit more of how we're able to track your response to supports for adult family members with the COVID-19 pandemic. So for each of these, we've got a form that we need to fill out that gives us more information about that particular activity. Based on my selection of whether or not this is a student or adult family member activity, our questions below will change. And then here at the activity level, we also want to understand if this activity is an in-person only activity, a virtual only activity, or a hybrid activity. So I think this will give us some really interesting information in terms of how we've set up programming over the course of this year because of the pandemic. We do have a section for partner information. I won't go too much into that, but essentially we need to add all of our partners and fill out a little bit of information for each of the partners that we're working with. The youth and adult reporting sections are probably a little bit more complex. In order to report on attendance for both youth and adults, the first step in our process is to enroll our youth. So when you come to this page, we'll have to go through a process of creating a roster, essentially, and completing that roster before I can move on to report attendance. And again, I'm not going to go into the details of how to do this. We're going to cover that in some of our training sessions that will be coming up. But just to show you, we do record information attendance at the daily level for each month. So in each month that I did have programming, we asked that you record your attendance for students on the daily level. I should also note that there's this online user interface entry to do that, but we do also have Excel templates that can be exported and imported to the system, which I think are a little bit easier and more streamlined in terms of the time perspective. And really quickly, adults, again, we have to enroll our adult participants first. Once we've done that, we can move on to reporting attendance. And for the reporting of adult attendance, it's different from youth. Instead of, daily participation for the month, we just want to understand, did this particular adult family member participate in any of these types of activities over the course of this month, yes or no? And this is where we can really capture and tie our information back to the activities in terms of participation in certain types of activities, or if you have other types of activities that I mentioned before that might be more related to the COVID-19 pandemic, kind of making those connections, then that's where we would capture that information here. Looks like I've got about 2 minutes left, so I'm going to really quickly show us a couple of the reports. Completion status is a really important report. So at any time you can go into the completion status report and understand where you are in terms of that completion status. So as a project director, when you log in, this is likely the screen that you will see when you click on completion status report. And so it just gives us a yes or no on whether or not we are complete for a specific grantee and center. And then for youth and adults, I can drill down a little bit further to understand which months I might be missing data in. I also have the option of going to the data reporting page. And that gets us back into the area where we can go in and update our information. We also have the ability to take a look at attendance. Again, this is the testing site, so I don't have a lot of information in here right now, but we're able to kind of take a look at our attendance over the course of the program year. And then I can drill down by grantee, I can select by grantee, or I can select by center. When I do so, that gives me another piece of information, total attendance versus average daily attendance for the month. Got several different charts down here that just allow us to understand a little bit more about what our attendance looks like. So I'm going to pop back out of this, talk really quickly about and training, and then just kind of general timeline. So I didn't cover it on the website, but there is a resources tab where we can go and access the user manual for the Data Hub, as well as any of the pre-recorded trainings on specific modules, and also prior webinar training events. We always post those there after we've completed them, so you can refer back to them. In terms of timeline, we're in the final stages of rolling information over from the prior year for returning grantees. And then we'll be going in likely next week and making sure that we've got all of our new grantees in the system as well. So I imagine by the end of next week, we'll be able to share and invite you to the system. And then probably toward the latter part of this month is where we will offer a couple of different live virtual trainings on going through each of the sections of the Data Hub and figuring out how to enter information into it. So we would certainly encourage that for new program directors, if you're brand new, or if you're a returning grantee that has new staff, that is something that we would also encourage folks to attend. But with that, I know I'm probably about a minute or two over time. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm certainly happy to try to answer them for you.
Thank you, Samantha. This
You're
is
welcome.
Joyce. I do have a question. So when will the brand new project directors be able to get access, set up the passwords and log in information into the Data Hub?
Yeah, so I'm thinking sometime next week. Right now, our timeline from our developers in terms of rolling over into the new reporting period, they hope to have that done by the end of this week. And then I'll spend some time next week just cleaning up our sub-grantee and center list with the information that you all provided to me in terms of, removing anyone who no longer needs access, and then also adding our new grantees. So I'm thinking by the end of next week, we should be able to give people access to that.
And then the training will come shortly thereafter?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, some of the things are explanatory in there, like the operations, but we'd certainly want to spend some time assisting people on the attendance reporting. That's the most complex piece of it.
Okay. Thank you so much. Project directors, if you have questions for Samantha, you can put them into the chat box. Thank you so much, Samantha. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Let's see. We have come almost to the end now. Shonda, I'm going to ask you to tell them about the evaluations. And if you all would take the time to complete them, that just helps us to better plan, to, see what we can improve upon for our next session. So Shonda, I'm going to ask you to just talk briefly about the evaluations.
Muted. Okay, I have on the screen here, I hope you can see it, a copy of an email that I just sent while Samantha was presenting. I sent a copy of our evaluation. If you are unable to use the QR code by pointing your camera to this screen, I sent an email and there is a link there that you can click and it'll take you to our evaluation form.
Thank you, Shonda. All right, Latasha, do you have any questions in the chat box for us?
No, there aren't any questions in the chat box.
Okay. Project directors, if you have any questions, you can unmute yourselves and ask your questions before we adjourn. Okay. Hearing none, we'll be on for an additional maybe 3 minutes. Just to make sure you don't have any questions. If you do have questions after we end the session, feel free to communicate with your program director here at the Department of Ed. And thank you so much for taking time. I hope that it's been beneficial to you, that you learned something, and that you can take these resources and just help your program, enhance your program to be even better. Thank you so much again. Stay safe. You and your family stay safe. And meeting's adjourned. Thank you. We'll be on for a few minutes if you need any more questions answered.
I'm going to go ahead and stop recording now.
Okay, thank you.